This is Roland, the strongest swordsman in the kingdom who single-handedly killed every demon in the world. After years of war, he finally finds peace alongside Felicia, the woman he loves, and they start living together in a quiet village. But the world is not a Disney movie where everyone hugs at the end. Roland was training when he feels a dark energy coming from the sky. The Demon King appears to get revenge for everything Roland did to him. He doesn't just want to kill humans. He wants to cause chaos and watch the despair on people's faces, so he casts a curse on every single person in the village. Roland runs to his wife and tries to save her, but it was already too late. She was already possessed. When the mutation is complete, she attacks without control. He can't bring himself to hurt his own wife and just keeps defending himself. Since the Demon King wants to see Roland's despair, he uses magic to pin down his arms and legs. Now that he can't move, his cursed wife closes in and rips his arm clean off. Thinking he was about to die, a memory flashes through his mind of his wife, telling him that he needs to stay alive, and so the hero makes the hardest decision of his life. She lunges at him and drives her claws into his stomach, so he bites down on the sword's handle with everything he has and cuts his wife in half. The Demon King bursts out laughing, knowing he finally got his revenge and destroyed the hero's life. Roland couldn't survive his wounds and died. Of course, the hero is going to come back, get insanely strong, and get revenge on the Demon King just like every other story. Not even Thanos could beat this plot. He won the war 14 million times, but the one time he lost, they made a movie about it. Back to Roland, waking up in an empty place that's completely white. A goddess named Myonotis tells him his story isn't over yet and will bring him back to get revenge on the Demon King. The only problem is he'll never be a swordsman again because the arm he used to wield his sword was destroyed, so she gives him a replacement arm. Roland falls from the sky and wakes up on the ground. That's when he finds out he has his wife's arm, but the mutant version. He buries what's left of Felicia and tries to grab his sacred sword, but the new arm rejects it. A monster shows up to attack. Roland swings the mutant arm and throws a punch so powerful it blows the monster to pieces. This new arm isn't just a curse. It has an insane amount of strength that breaks the laws of reality. He has what he needs to get revenge, but the price is steep because when people see what he's become, they no longer see a hero. They see a monster. Rumors spread like wildfire. Half the village was mutated and the other half is dead. So Roland leaves the destroyed lands when out of nowhere he takes a flying kick straight to the back of his head. It's Solana, Felicia's younger sister and his sister-in-law. She's an insanely good fighter who refuses to listen to him and comes in swinging right away. Roland only defends himself because she's the only family he has left from his wife's side. In the middle of the fight, a giant monster ambushes Solana and hurls a massive rock at her. When the creature is almost on top of her, Roland leaps onto the monster's head, grabs it by the neck, and crushes its skull with the new arm. That's when he realizes the new arm absorbs the strength of whoever he kills. Later that night, Solana has calmed down, and Roland is finally able to tell her the brutal truth about what happened to Felicia. Instead of blaming him, she grabs his mutant hand and demands to join the revenge mission. They travel together and figure out the fastest way to find the Demon King is to draw him out by wiping out his top lieutenants. They head straight to Meridog's castle, but when they break down the doors, the Demon King is nowhere to be found. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice says the executive isn't there. The speaker steps closer and introduces himself as Crones. He says he's in charge of watching the place while his boss is away. Looking closer, the kid recognizes Roland and asks how he's even alive. Rumor said the Demon Lord killed him. In an instant, Roland lunges, but Crones slips away, warning him how dangerous that was and laughing that they're in the middle of an important conversation. Crones dodges again, this time avoiding Solana's surprise attack and mocks them for being cruel enough to attack a kid. Even Roland's shocked the brat is fast enough to outpace even Meridogo. On the other hand, Crones is happy when he sees the warrior's arm, obviously, from a woman who turned into a monster. The sight makes him laugh. Can't wait to tell the Demon Lord what he found. The protagonist demands to know who he is and where Meridogo went. The kid isn't about to answer, but since he's kind, Crones tosses them one thing. Meridogo headed to Okuna village where the survivors have been rebuilding. Roland can't believe they're going to wreck his hometown again. Their shock just makes Crones laugh harder if they want to stop him. They don't have time to stand around talking. Either way, he doesn't plan to stop them from going. The protagonist knows leaving Crones behind could bite them later, but they can't afford a fight and a return trip. Solana says they're running to Okuna and bolts from the palace. Roland follows. He's not letting innocent people die. Still, he tells the kid to wait. They'll come back and kill him later. That only amuses Kronz. With the chance in front of him, he decides he'll report everything he saw. That'll make things a lot more interesting. Meanwhile, Maridogo attacks the villagers, interrogating each one about where Roland's body is. He says it's a great honor for a demon to be granted a region by their lord. Even so, losing to a mere human on day one is a humiliation he'll never forget. That's why he's here to redo everything he failed at after crawling back from the depths of hell. He'll drag that other woman into this world too, and this time he'll win. A villager asks if the demons didn't turn Roland into a monster as well. That's not what Maridogo heard from the Lord, so he demands details until Roland himself arrives, stopping the destruction before it spreads. Perfect. No need to dig through corpses. Maridogo would rather fight him again. He brings up the arm of rejection that can save the world, meaning the protagonist's new power, and Solana jumps in first. She refuses to be ignored. They won't do what he wants, and she's ready to. Fighting alongside his sister-in-law, Maridogo yanks out a fistful of his own hair and throws it down. Lava surges. From it, creatures rise and rush. The villagers, Maridogo's flame soldiers, made to burn every human nearby. It's an obvious trap meant to pull Solana away from the duel. Neither of them likes it, even as the demon executive insists he only wants a one-on-one with Roland. He even promises he won't touch the village anymore, calling that the fair way to do it. Roland has no choice but to agree. He tells his sister-in-law to help the people while he handles the monster. He knows she's worried, but if she hesitates, they'll lose more lives. Solana takes off, going with the plan. She'll be back soon, alone. Maridogo readies himself, then pauses. Roland feels different than before. Maridogo asks what happened to the sword that beat him. This time, he planned to destroy it and repay the humiliation. Roland doesn't answer. He just tells him to start. A little bored, Maridogo charges first. Roland knows it'd be a lie to claim he'll win just because he beat him once. Now he's weakened without the holy sword, and Maridogo's sinister aura is crushing. The gap has flipped since that day, but Roland never planned to lose. He won't back down. If he doesn't have a sword, he'll use his own arm. He'll strike with it, deflect with it, copying the same motions he used with the blade. The footwork and tactics he trained for years are still there. He can fight with just that arm. Maridogo is faster. He lands a clean hit to Roland's chest. Roland immediately feels that the reach difference between a sword and an arm is brutal. At the same time, he wonders why. Maridogo held back on that strike, like he was trying not to hit as hard. Cutting off Roland's thoughts, he moves even faster, winding up a flamethrower blast. Fire erupts, forcing Roland to retreat again, dodging debris. Maridogo shows off, bragging he came back from hell way stronger on a whole different level now. Roland knows a direct hit would kill him. This is bad. But Maridogo can't help wondering what happened. Roland feels weaker than before. He asks if Roland's really gonna fight with just his arm, and even starts to think the fight that killed him was a fluke, maybe dumb luck. Roland refuses to explain. He lets Maridogo think whatever he wants, then rushes him. It doesn't take long for Roland to realize he's gonna have to use the power he's been holding back, the plunder arm. It lets him steal an enemy's strength. That's how Roland flings Maridogo away. Even so, it's not enough to beat him. Maridogo's surprised when some of his power gets stolen, but it's nowhere near enough to scratch him. The rematch he's craved turning out this boring just disappoints him. He asks Roland what his goal even is, especially now that he's become so unpleasant. Roland glares, irritated, which only confuses Maridogo more because the human looks ugly now compared to how heroic he used to be. Roland snaps that Maridogo has no right to insult her arm. After a beat, the executive laughs loudly and pretends to apologize for not realizing sooner where that monstrous limb came from. Now Roland's anger makes sense. It's a piece of his dead beloved. Maridogo keeps mocking him for being so stupid he lets feelings control him. Maridogo's words fade out in Roland's head, replaced by the silent apology he's making to Felicia. He had to use it for horrible things. Even so, he wants to end this fast and make his opponent stop talking nonsense. When Maridogo fires a fireball, Roland uses his wife's arm to steal that power. A huge smoky explosion blooms, and Maridogo grins. Sure. He's won until a light wipes the smugness off his face. Roland absorbed the attack. He pulled it off, but he can't fully contain the flames, and he's clearly in pain. Roland calls it a few scratches, and the executive laughs at how gutsy he is. Fine. Then he'll shut the warrior's big mouth with one hit. Inside, Roland knows the damage isn't minor, but the flame power lets him bend the enemy's attacks back at him. He proves it when they clash, and he breaks Maridogo's weapon with his bare hands. It's not just flames around his arm. He's blasting them out through his elbow to crank up the intensity. Maridogo stares at his destroyed hammer, then tosses it aside and keeps coming. He's not letting Roland get cocky over a little boost. He'll show him how fire is really used in battle. Magic floods the executive's body as he charges straight at Roland, desperate to prove the gap in their control. They clash again with a boom so loud even Solana turns back toward the battlefield. Roland quickly realizes Maridogo's strength keeps rising, and defending gets harder. His right arm is tougher, awakened with more power, but the rest of him is still human, and it won't hold much longer. Perfect. It's the insane heat that will give him his chance. To Maridogo's shock, Roland tries to take the flames again. So Maridogo goes all out, aiming to overload him too much magic to contain at once. They both shout, and then Roland laughs because he's actually withstanding it. Then he hurls all that stored power back at the demon, dealing a fatal wound. Maridogo can only collapse completely still. Even Roland is stunned by how incredible Felicia's arm is stronger than before, able to take every last trace of power from his enemy. He probably wouldn't be able to pull off an attack that strong again, but at least he could use the flames in the future. If he kept defeating executives and stealing their magic, one day he'd be strong enough to take down the demon lord himself. In his mind, he asked Felicia to lend him more of her power in the days ahead. Suddenly, Solana showed up, calling him by name. Roland asked if she was safe after helping the villagers. She said almost all the monsters were dead, and most of them had ended up burned by the flames anyway. Then she saw his wound and panicked. "Is there anything I can do?" "I'm fine," Roland said, forcing it. "We need to leave now." The commotion would draw the royal guard and the subjugation squad too. If they came, they'd mistake him for a monster and attack. Solana slipped under his arm to help him walk, thinking he'd never used that power before. After pushing himself that hard, of course, he'd end up like this. So she decided she'd be the support he needed until they got out. Before they could go, a voice called out, asking Roland to wait. Some of the surviving villagers stepped forward. They wanted the truth. Had he really not turned into some kind of creature? That's what they'd thought when they first saw him, so they were stunned to realize Roland was still human. Roland didn't even know what to say, thinking about everything he'd been through, but Solana answered for him. "He's human," she said, completely. They just had to look at how he fought. He did everything he could to protect them to take on Maridogo and win. Deep down, Roland hadn't changed at all. He was still the biggest hero that village had. Roland felt his throat tighten. One by one, the villagers nodded, remembering he'd been their pride. Someone apologized for how they treated him earlier, and the rest followed, thanking him for saving them, asking how he was holding up. Now that they knew the truth, they wanted to report it to the kingdom's subjugation squad, to make sure Roland wouldn't be hunted down. Roland appreciated it, but he shook his head. Don't. The way he looked now would only keep the misunderstanding alive. Once people got scared and started doubting him, it was only a matter of time before he'd be forced to cut himself off from humanity. Even if some believed him, others would call them brainwashed by demons. He couldn't let innocent people get dragged into danger because of him. He told them to leave the village now and decided to leave the survivors in charge while he and Solana headed out. Still, a few villagers insisted on helping. They ran off to grab bandages and whatever medicine they could find. Solana promised him, quietly, that someday they'd come back home with Felicia and finally live happily for real. Then another voice cut in. A purple silhouette formed in the air, managed to connect. Roland and Solana spun around, startled, ready to fight until Crones appeared. The boy laughed. "Relax. In my current state, I can only talk to you. My main body is somewhere else." He said he could hear the voice, but he couldn't feel the presence he was searching for. Still, it was impressive Maridogo had really been defeated again. And in this situation, necromancy only worked once. They couldn't bring him back anyway. Roland demanded to know who he was. He could tell Cronus wasn't one of Maridogo's underlings. Cronus nodded. "Right. That's why I came to greet you." This time, he introduced himself properly, the new officer appointed under the Demon Lord's orders to replace the dead executive and occupy the empty lands. He even apologized for lying earlier about being just a demon child. The truth is, I'm Meridogo's successor. He said he knew Roland wanted revenge against the evil king, but beating that demon wouldn't change anything. His boss hadn't been interested in Roland for a long time. Still, since Roland had won, crones thought it would be cruel to leave without a reward. Their race loved human despair. That had always been the point of attacking humans in the first place. Someone like Roland would be an incredible meal, and it'd be a waste to kill him outright. Solana had just lost her older sister too. It'd be interesting to see where all this took them. The girl stammered that she could fight, that she'd do anything to prove herself. The new executive only laughed and told her to keep trying because despair would never wake up unless hope came first. They needed those two heroes to keep pushing forward but not to defeat him, to face Zeno. With that, the boy said goodbye and vanished. Roland told Solana searching nearby was pointless. Privately, he couldn't stop thinking about how Meridogo really had been revived by that brat, and the fact the new executive showed up so fast proved it. No matter how many times they killed them, another one would always appear to replace them. Even so, Roland knew he had to defeat every demon he ran into. Solana, missing all of that, beamed. Magic that revived the dead really did exist in this world, so there had to be a way to bring Felicia back. Roland was honestly shocked that was the only thing she could think about right now. She hesitated, worried she sounded weird, but Roland saw it as a good thing. Either way, they found their footing again. From here on out, all that was left was to keep moving. Solana said they should treat her brother-in-law's injuries, and she'd handle his training. Roland didn't know anything about martial arts, and she did. Later, Roland slipped into that same dream again, pulled into the white space, and there she was. Felicia was back. They still couldn't talk or touch. She was only something his mind had made, but part of him wished he could break free from all this suffering. Living somewhere so empty with nothing to do had to be painfully boring. Felicia suddenly looked off to the side, and Roland felt it too. Meridogo's flames were nearby. That power was still sitting inside him. He asked if that fire wasn't keeping his late wife from finally resting in peace. Felicia quietly said it felt warm. When Roland woke, Solana greeted him, bright and loud, and said she'd warmed up soup for breakfast. After they ate, they could start training. Even then, Roland couldn't stop wondering if it was really okay for Felicia that he kept going down this path. They'd been drilling combat techniques for a while, and he needed time to get used to fighting without a sword. Solana told him the main thing in hand-to-hand was footwork. Roland agreed. Distance control and weight shifts mattered. He knew that because he'd missed a bunch of mid-range chances against Meridogo, and the unnecessary strength in his new arm wasn't the secret to getting stronger. So Solana decided to check his current level. They'd spar the same way they had the last few days. Roland nodded, got ready, and threw a punch into the air. A huge gust of wind kicked up. Solana jumped, startled. His power was way higher than yesterday. She lit up, convinced her brother-in-law might be some kind of combat genius swords in martial arts. Roland laughed at how hype she was. It's not like that. I just trained on my own last night. Seeing what he'd done to the forest made Solana wonder how many hours he'd gone without stopping. Deep down, she'd always known the world's greatest swordsman did things in a pretty insane way, so she suggested the opposite approach, create distance, step back. Martial artists couldn't wear heavy armor, so dodging mattered. Especially now, her brother-in-law wasn't protecting his own life at all. He kept throwing himself into danger. He needed those techniques so he'd at least try to stay a little safer. Solana explained they should control space with a technique called hit and run so they could take down multiple opponents easily. Roland refused. Even if he tried to copy it, he'd never match her speed. She could move like that because she was top class. That, she blushes at the compliment, but Roland's already got an idea to deal with several enemies at once. Near the forest is an area crawling with hellhounds, monsters that hunt by the smell of blood. The first time he beat Meridogo, the subjugation request got messy because those things were nearby. Roland grabs a blood-stained rock off the ground, and Solana stares. Confused, he calms her down and tells her to watch. He'll keep her safe. Then he hurls the rock into the forest. A terrifying presence answers. Several red eyes snap open at once. Solana immediately gets what he's doing. In a fight, the key is choosing the right tactic, and that includes against hellhounds. If he fights them now, he can train for multiple opponents at once. Meanwhile, Crones walks through the forest with a scared little girl. She knows it's too dangerous, but the boy keeps urging her on, promising everything will be fine. Back with Roland, the pack closes in. Hellhounds move in groups, separate squads under a single leader coordinating their attacks. If he can't beat them, facing the demon lord stays a distant dream. So Roland picks a fight without a hint of fear. Solana warns him several are closing in even from behind. Roland already knows the pattern. One unit draws his attention while another goes for his blind spot. They're smart. The best counter is hit and run, constantly shifting positions, but he isn't that fast. So he commits to the opposite, go all out and crush them head on. And every time one drops, he steals its energy, preparing for whatever comes next, stronger with every kill. Even if it costs him his life, he can't afford to back off, not until he gets his revenge. Watching, Solana can't help being impressed. Her brother-in-law can already fight like this. Soon, only one remains, massive, clearly the leader. More stamina. More power. The real battle starts now. Roland feels the strength in his right arm at its peak, and he knows he can take it down. Solana jumps in too, dropping a few nearby hellhounds that try to close in. Roland's already beaten around 20, but the leader keeps ducking behind fresh packs spilling out of the forest. If that's how it wants to play it, then he'll have to wipe them all out. The training's done. Roland's sure his next strike can finish this in one go. Then he realizes the leader's trying to run, using its underlings as a shield. No chance. Roland charges straight at it. At the same time, Crones keeps walking with the girl. She wants to go home, asking if their village is really this way. She even thinks the boy must be lost too. No idea who he really is. Once they're far enough, Crones laughs. He admits he's been lying the whole time. Hellhounds were summoned by someone, and she's about to be attacked and killed. If she wants to hate anyone, she should hate the summoner. He leaves her frozen in shock, waves, and vanishes. Alone, the girl panics, not knowing where to go. Soon she hears something in the woods. She curls up, crying, begging not to die. Before the hellhounds can reach her, Roland bursts in and cuts down the ones in his way, saving her almost by accident. He asks where she came from. The girl just stares, shocked by the huge arm on the man who saved her. Either way, Roland knows he has to protect her. He's the one who drew the hellhounds in. He tells her to close her eyes, irritated that the leader managed to slip away because his Roland's focus slips for a moment and the fight turns defensive. He has to keep his energy up and protect the girl in his arms. Just as he starts to worry, Solana rushes in to help. Roland thanks her and admits he doesn't know who the girl is. He just pulled her away before the forest monsters could get to her. Even shaking, the girl manages, "I'm Lily." Solana praises her for saying hello even though she's scared. Roland asks his sister-in-law to watch Lily while he takes care of something else. The boss is close now, and he's not letting it get away again. He does exactly what Solana drilled into him, footwork to close the distance. He surges forward, cutting down every dog in his path as he charges the boss. Lily can only stare as he fights. Beside her, Solana asks why she was somewhere that dangerous. Still tense, Lily explains a boy she'd never seen before brought her there. He asked her to help him get home, and when she did, he abandoned her in the middle of the forest, then vanished right in front of her. Roland figures she was tricked by a demon, and it's probably still watching. Solana asks which way she came from, and Lily points, adding that she's from the village of Kariki. Solana knows Kariki's far from the big city, so chances are nobody there will recognize Roland. Still, they can't just send her home alone. Roland tells Lily to keep the arm she saw a secret. Lily blinks. Confused, she thought it was pretty cool. To her, the warrior was amazing for saving her like that.
Roland sigh.
He told her to close her eyes during the fight. He didn't want a kid watching creatures die, but Solana thinks it's good it happened. After a moment, Roland remembers Felicia's smile and quietly agrees. Later, the three head to the village. Roland notices there aren't many young men around. If only a few people ever go to the city's guild, the odds of him being recognized are low. Lily leads them home and calls for her mom, bright with excitement about their visitors. Her mother comes out, asks who they are, and freezes when she hears they're the ones who saved Lily from a monster. She checks Lily over, and Lily calmly says she's fine, that they protected her really well. After scolding her for going off alone, her mom hugs her tight and makes her promise never to do it again. A little later, the woman thanks them at the door and asks their names. Solana introduces herself as a traveling martial artist, then nervously introduces Roland as Laura. The mom frowns at the feminine name, but thanks them anyway. Roland forces out an apology for the weird name. The woman says it's fine and invites them in, offering a meal as thanks. Mom and daughter hurry into the kitchen and wave them inside. Roland immediately scolds his sister-in-law for the awful fake name. Solana apologizes, it was the only thing she could think of. Besides, Laura was the name Roland used when they played house as kids. Inside, Roland points out what's off about the village, and Solana agrees. There are barely any men. There's probably a demon targeting the villagers. So they decide to stay and take down whatever's threatening the civilians. Crohn's was stronger than Maridogo. They needed to use every spare moment to get stronger, fight every demon that showed up, and build a style that fit each situation. Saving the world had been their dream from the start. Roland's, Solana's, and Felicia's. Lily pops back out to call them in already. They've gotten distracted talking. Outside, the village elder watches from a distance, silently sizing them up. Later, the four of them eat dinner soup Lily's mom made. Lily beams, proud she chopped the vegetables for the guests. Solana says it's delicious even as the mom apologizes for not having anything fancier. Ever since her husband died 5 years ago, she's had to do everything herself. So Roland carefully asks if his death was because of she says yes. There are old ruins outside the village, and a group of monsters moved in. Her husband died back when Lily was too little to remember him. Solana asks why they didn't leave. The mom says Lily was tiny and they had nowhere to go. The village chief filed a subjugation request, but they're so remote nobody cared. The protagonist knew those requests were desperate cries for help, and once they got pushed aside, they almost never resurfaced. That's why villages like this got neglected and left to rot. The woman doesn't even want to complain about it now. Roland pushes back. There's no need to think like that. Even if other people are suffering too, that doesn't mean you have to pick and choose who deserves saving. He asks where the tribe is. They'll handle it themselves. That worries the woman. Neither of them looks like they're carrying weapons heavy enough to. Lily gets fired up about defeating those creatures, agreeing with her mom, and even starting to bring up a certain person. Then she hesitates and goes quiet. Solana says they're strong enough to do the job properly. The truth is, in the last few years, the world has gotten used to demon tribes being around. People get angry, but they tell themselves they have no choice except to accept it as normal. That's why the two of them head to the ruins to deal with the monsters. But they don't know the layout inside, and it could be packed with traps to keep intruders out. The basic rule for adventurers was never carelessly step into enemy territory. The warrior thinks of something he likes to do in situations like this and asks his sister-in-law to lend him a bit of firepower. Solana's a martial artist fast, and she uses magic tools to boost her attacks. Her gloves are loaded with magical gunpowder that can cause explosions. With that, plus the arm that absorbed Maridogo's flames, Roland can hit like a wrecking ball. So he uses the combo to blow up the entrance to the ruins and wipe out any threat waiting inside. For stuff like this, he figures the best move is to destroy the nest completely. Solana worries the ruins might have major historical value, and wrecking them could cause problems. Roland says the villagers' lives matter more than some old landmark. Besides, the real fight is just starting. Something big is coming out of the rubble. A huge stone golem appears, and on top of it is someone who immediately realizes the ruins were attacked. Obviously, a demon furious that two humans caused that much damage on their own. He'd assumed nobody in the nearby village was strong enough to fight back, and he'd done everything he could to get rid of all the strong men. Roland figures this thing is probably responsible for Lily's father's death, but it's a tricky matchup. Demon tribes were behind schemes that drove people into despair led by the Dark Lord. Monsters were creatures that just repeated destruction that had already happened once. Golems, though, were just stone and earth moved by magic. In other words, Roland can't drain energy from that opponent, an unexpected kind of enemy. The demon gets annoyed when he realizes someone can withstand the golem's attacks. He likes bullying humans who can't fight back, but these two are martial artists. Solana rushes him, but he blocks her easily. He tries to finish both of them at once and forces them back using the golem. Roland realizes this demon isn't some high-ranking executive type, but he's still skilled. Then the demon uses magic to create smaller stone golems to buy time. The protagonist tells Solana to handle the small ones, which annoys her because it's the same strategy they used against Maridogo. The problem is the warrior has never fought a golem that big either, and it's too dangerous for his sister-in-law to take alone. And the demon is eager to crush them fast. The next attack makes Roland raise his right arm to block, and it's not easy. The smaller creatures try to jump him, but Solana quickly destroys them. The stones are heavy, and the protagonist knows he won't be able to smash. Seeing him struggle, Solana tells him to use his hips like in training. Roland plants his feet and channels that strength. With effort, he smashes the golem stones. His arm's ability isn't enough on its own. He has to boost it with their techniques to withstand whatever the monster dishes out. Then, to Solana's alarm, her brother-in-law gets trapped between stone hands. What Roland just destroyed rebuilds in the blink of an eye. The demon laughs. The creature can remake itself whenever it needs to. In the hands of a puppet master like him, the demon tribe's upper class is well protected. Roland breaks out anyway, but the golem's regeneration is insane. The classic way to beat a golem is to destroy its core, but something that big could have multiple hearts. He'll have to find them all. Solana rushes in and tells him they need to switch positions now. Roland worries she won't have the strength to destroy it, but she wants him hunting cores while she buys time with her crazy speed. She can dodge most attacks, but the ones she can't still hurt. Even so, she realizes she can track weak points by listening to the sound the stone makes when it strikes. She won't let Roland fight alone, especially with Felicia gone. Right now, she's the only one who can back him up. When the martial artist jumps down from the golem, she tells Roland she found 3 cores: right, shoulder, chest, and belly. The demon's still processing how they figured it out so fast, but Roland doesn't wait. He hits the spot she called out. He breaks the right shoulder and, inside the hole, finds a bright blue stone, exactly what he needs. The demon's fury spikes as the golem starts to collapse, and he can't stop Roland from tearing through the weak points. Forced to change tactics, the demon mage reshapes the creature into another form so it can escape. There's no reason to stay locked in with 2 dangerous martial artists. He'd only been haunting these ruins to torment weak civilians and squeeze despair out of them. Right then, Solana charges in at a speed as high as the golem's, catching him off guard. He still doesn't accept defeat. He knows her attacks aren't strong enough to destroy the cores, but Solana doesn't back down. She's been saving a special move. She releases the magic stored in her gloves and fires it all at once, pouring the rest of her firepower through them. The technique is called explosion. She uses it on the golem and it falls apart fast. Realizing he's lost, the demon starts crying and begging them not to kill him. Roland asks if he's the one who took a certain girl into the middle of the forest. The demon denies it, saying he usually saves the youngest for last. First, he kills the adult men and makes their kids despair, leaving the weak scrambling to protect the most vulnerable. He swears he isn't the one Roland's looking for, begging for his life. Roland only sees living trash. If it wasn't this guy, then some other evil being tricked Lily. That makes him suspect Crohn's himself even without proof. Roland drifts into thought. The demon tries to take advantage and attack. Roland stops him easily and counters with a punch to the face, dropping him without a second thought. Even then, Roland knows this wasn't a high-rank enemy. He doesn't leave behind any power like Maridogo's flames. When Solana comes over to call him, Roland decides they should head back to the village as soon as possible. Later, the 2 of them went back to Lily's house and told everyone what happened, saying they'd defeated the demon in the ruins, but they still hadn't found whoever had tricked the girl earlier. Lily's mother told them not to worry after all. They'd already done more than enough by avenging her late husband. The 2 martial artists knew that if they stayed, they'd only bring trouble to the villagers. Outsiders lingering too long made people uneasy. Lily didn't get it. They'd beaten the evil creature, so why would anyone feel uncomfortable? Instead of explaining, her mom told her to come help on the farm. It was getting dark. She didn't mind leaving Roland and Solana at the house a little longer. She wasn't going to stop them. Even if she didn't have much, she wanted to repay them with a bed and some food so they could get their strength back. Roland realized that even after killing the demon, he still couldn't make the villagers happy. Still, he wanted to believe the path he was on would let people smile someday. Back to what mattered. Solana suggested they head to the city. They were low on firepower, and they could probably claim a reward for taking down the demon. The closest place was the kingdom's biggest trade hub, Altrade. Even if they could get paid, Roland thought it was too risky to show himself there. He'd be in and out of all kinds of places, and there was a good chance they'd run into someone who knew him. And if a fight broke out inside Altrade, escaping without causing damage wouldn't be easy. Seeing how worried he was, his sister-in-law agreed to do what he asked even though she knew subjugation requests got buried easily. She also knew Roland was famous across the kingdom, and the news that he turned into a monster had been everywhere. But they needed money and supplies. They were out of food, out of firepower, and Solana needed new gloves. If they were going all in on fighting demons, the best move was Ultrod. Roland wondered if Solana was pushing for it to keep him connected to other humans. If so, it felt wrong to brush off her kindness. He agreed on the condition he wouldn't go into the guild. So they traveled through the kingdom of Gringard toward the biggest commercial city, Ultrod. It sat in the center of the kingdom, roads feeding it goods from all over the world, iron, food, medicine, weapons, magical tools. Everything came in, got traded, then shipped back out. Where goods moved, money moved, and people made their living off it. Adventurers and royal knights stayed in Altrade to protect the merchandise, and that need only grew with demons able to invade. Even so, if that demon lord attacked for real, no human could stop it. Everyone would die in the blink of an eye. Roland couldn't help wondering if the reason it hadn't happened yet was because the creature was waiting for something. When they hit the streets, the city was as busy as ever. People streamed past in every direction. Maybe they could stay a few days if they kept their guard up and didn't get recognized. First, they needed money. Solana decided to go straight to the guild and report the demon's defeat while Roland looked for an inn. As he walked, voices suddenly rose in the crowd. In the middle of a stack of crates, someone was kicking a man on the ground, furious, screaming at a shopkeeper for selling him useless gunpowder. The shop owner, confused, said he didn't remember ever doing business with him and suggested he had the wrong person. They kept arguing until the seller snapped that if it was really his product, the guy should show the gunpowder's mark. Roland thought the city really was lively just for all the wrong reasons. All trade was full of dangerous people, even villains hiding in the shadows. Nobody felt any need to help anyone else. Everyone lived for themselves and handled their own problems. Even with the city thriving, the threat of demons still sat in the back of everyone's mind. Still, Roland was the only one who stepped up. Roland steps into the commotion and tells the customer to calm down. When the man keeps escalating, Roland points out they can't prove the gunpowder he bought came from this shop. The customer tries to push past him, but Roland's grip is so strong he can't move and can barely breathe. Finally, the guy gives up, shoves the shopkeeper to the ground, and storms off, snapping that he'd better be more careful next time. Watching him go, Roland can't help wondering if that warning was meant for him too. The shopkeeper hurries over to thank Roland, saying he can't possibly repay him and offers free gunpowder.
Roland refuse.
Instead, he says that if a female martial artist comes by, the shopkeeper should let her take whatever she needs for free. Roland doesn't know what materials or brand his sister-in-law uses, and he'd rather not guess wrong. Still confused, the shopkeeper agrees. Roland heads out and decides to find an inn for the night. After a while, he sighs and stops. Someone's watching him. He glances aside and recognizes that long-distance gaze Charles. Before Roland lost his arm in the battle against the Demon King, he spent his days hunting monsters, getting stronger so he could defeat Maridogo. One day, while fighting a horde of skeletons, the one that looked like the boss lunged at him. Roland was about to strike when someone hit it from behind and froze it solid. The skeleton shattered, and Roland saw the man standing there, Charles Glass, an old acquaintance who genuinely cared about him. Roland was stunned. One hit that fast. Charles just said he'd been worried and came to check on him. Charles was the eldest son of the prestigious Glass family, famous for ice magic. Even as a noble, he still went to the battlefield and put himself in danger. It wasn't just skill. He was kind, looked after his teammates no matter their status, and civilians trusted him too. Back when Roland was still a swordsman, Charles was the one he spent the most time with on and off the battlefield. That day, Roland mentioned his village was nearby and invited him to stop by. Charles, clearly happy, asked if it was really okay, so they went to Felicia's house. Felicia welcomed them warmly and immediately got curious about the friend Roland brought home. Solana already knew Charles and greeted him right away. When Felicia realized Hui was a noble from House Glass, she froze. The idea of someone like that in their small home threw her so badly, she almost started cleaning on the spot. Solana stepped in and explained Charles was the type who casually visited regular taverns. Charles agreed, saying that when they fought demons, everyone there was human and on the same side. Even so, Solana couldn't help noticing how much he stood out, like he practically glowed among commoners. Roland told them they'd run into each other after the battle, and that he'd be happy if Felicia became friends with Charles too. Once she understood, she decided to accept it. That night, the four of them ate together. Roland helped cook and Charles brought wine. They laughed, forgot the war for a while, and had a genuinely good time. Charles even praised Roland for having such a wonderful family. Then Roland admitted that even though he always said his goal was to defeat the demon race and save the world, what he really wanted was to protect that happiness. Charles called it an admirable dream and offered to help. Back in the present, Roland asks if Charles knows about the subjugation request. Charles says yes. He admits he was shocked to hear Roland had become a demon, and he believed it was his duty to end Roland's suffering before he caused more damage. But seeing him now, Charles can't shake the feeling there has to be a reason this happened. Roland, surprised, asks if Charles really plans to listen to the words of a so-called demon. Charles laughs and says it should be fine to expect at least a little sanity from him. And besides, he thinks he's strong enough to defend himself if anything happens. Hearing that, Roland can only sigh and wonder how dependable Charles really is. With that permission, he confesses everything to his old friend. Everything from Okana village to Felicia to her trip to defeat the demon lord. Charles is clearly crushed by the protagonist's wife's death, and Roland says it was all his fault for not being strong enough. Even so, the warrior has blood in his eyes, dead set on making the evil king pay for everything he's done. But Charles asks if that's what Felicia would have wanted. Seeing the state of Roland's arm, the noble worries what she might think in the afterlife if she saw him now, sinking into revenge. Of course, Roland can't really know something like that even if he saw her in that dream. All he can do is accept the path he's chosen. There's nothing else. Charles sighs when he realizes he can't stop him, so he decides he'll buy time while his friend accomplishes his goal. Roland apologizes for putting him through this, but promises they'll meet again. As soon as the warrior leaves, a shadow appears beneath the noble's feet and forms into a small silhouette. It's Kranz, greeting Charles with a huge smile. The boy had been waiting for the right chance to meet him, but it looks like they won't even get to talk, because the noble is already getting ready to fight. Meanwhile, later on, Roland and his sister-in-law rest at the inn. Solana asks if it took him long to find her, and if he spent the afternoon exploring the city. The warrior says yeah, and explains he ran into Charles and told him everything and that Charles seemed to be on their side. Apparently, his friend plans to buy time and keep the royal knights from investigating the city. As for the guild stuff, Solana collected the reward for the subjugation without any trouble. She also bought a good amount of gunpowder while shopping. Apparently, there was some kind of discount campaign for female martial artists that day, so she got lucky. Acting like he has no idea, Roland just goes along with it and asks if they got any more info at the guild. Apparently, there wasn't anything special about the protagonist, since the request to kill him had already been marked as completed. There was nothing describing Crones or the Demon King either, which makes the two of them wonder what they're trying to do. At first, Solana thinks not getting information might be a good thing since it means they're in the clear. And Roland adds that at least Crones is targeting him specifically, so they'll end up meeting soon anyway. Until then, the warrior plans to keep killing other demons. So Solana pulls out a map and suggests they follow a certain route. While taking down the troll and Naga bosses, they should also track down a demon in black armor. Using the marked road, they could stop by Kariki village where Lily and the others were and repay them for the help they got last time. With everything decided, Solana says they should get some rest, they need to recover their energy. When Roland lies down to sleep, Solana gets up in the middle of the night and tries to talk to her late sister's arm. She asks if she'll ever be able to support the protagonist the way Felicia once did. In the past, the sisters had argued about being an adventurer and how dangerous it was. Solana wanted to do it because she'd always felt too dependent, and she figured it was better to move than stay stuck. Hearing her say all that, the older sister understands that if Solana decided it for herself, then it's probably for the best. Besides, Felicia would rather ask Solana to stay by Roland's side and take care of him. In exchange, Felicia could wait at home and make a place where he could rest when he was done with his tasks. The three of them should have been able to live together like a family. But ever since the day the village was attacked, the protagonist has been in non-stop battle. And now that Felicia isn't there anymore, Solana believes she has to become the place where the warrior can find comfort. Because if he gets consumed by revenge and breaks, things will only get worse, and it'll be because Solana couldn't fill her sister's role. The next day, she greets Roland with a loud upbeat "Good morning." He returns the greeting and asks if she slept well. Then the two of them leave the city, and while they defeat monsters and demons along the way, they head toward Kariki, where Lily and the others are. Things are going almost too well. Solana even feels calm. Then Roland catches a presence and tells his sister-in-law to stop. From the smell, he can tell what it is. Corpses nearby. That's what people call a plant monster, one that attacks with vines, then blooms flowers out of bodies to steal nutrients. If the guild had no reports, it must have appeared recently. Better to wipe it out before it spreads. They detour off the route and push deeper into the forest where little glimmers dot the ground. Flowers bloom everywhere. They're beautiful but wrong. Roland steps closer, punches a nearby tree, and several bodies drop from the treetops. The sight is so twisted, they worry they're too late. Then Solana sees it. Lily's mom is among the hanging bodies. While they're frozen, Roland realizes too late the flower that did this has moved in to attack. He tells Solana to leave the girl's mom for now. What matters is killing the monster. Roland uses his absorption arm to grab the vines and drain them, but it doesn't take long to notice more identical creatures surrounding them. Don't get fooled, Roland warns. They're all the same entity. Solana starts to answer, but a surprise attack whips in from the side. Roland blocks it just in time. Solana freaks out when she realizes it's a shot of poisonous liquid. Roland catches it and tries to throw it back, but the plant can't be hurt by its own poison. So he switches tactics and feeds flames through the vines. The fire spreads fast. Solana realizes it. If they're all connected as one, they can wipe them out in a blink. The creature spits poisonous bullets that explode on Roland's arms, seeds its defense, but Roland doesn't stop. The flames surge and devour everything in their path. When it's over, Roland turns and sees Solana checking Lily's mom. They freed her, but too much time has passed. All Solana can do is cry, blaming herself for being too late. Even Roland can't understand why she was out here. Then Solana spots something beside the body, a letter. That's what brought Lily's mom into the forest. The note asked her to come. Someone wanted to talk about Lily's safety, and it was signed with Roland's name. Roland goes cold. Solana can't wrap her head around how that's even possible or who would do it. Roland doesn't know either. He just knows he won't forgive whoever pulled something that cruel. Either way, they need to get to Kariki. The villagers could be next. They rush in, and at first, Solana thinks it looks safe, at least for now. They head for Lily's house, but Roland immediately feels something's off. A man shouts at them, demanding to know how they had the nerve to come back. Then more villagers pour in, accusing them of being demon tribe spies and demanding to know where they took Lily's mom. Solana tries to explain they don't even know what's going on. An older man cuts her off. This is all Roland's fault, and the proof is his right arm. Roland's stunned. They figured out what he'd been hiding under the bandages, but he can't deny it now. If no one will believe them, he says they'll leave for good after seeing Lily once. That only makes the villagers angrier. They're convinced the spies did something to her, brainwashed her. After all, Lily isn't even in the village, and everyone's been panicking about where she went. That news hits the main guy like a truck, but the other elders keep grilling the visitors. They knew Lily she'd spent so long trying to protect the demons that even after learning Roland's right arm was involved and watching her own mom disappear, she still wouldn't stop defending them. The others started thinking she was losing it. Solana told everyone to calm down. She didn't get what they were trying to prove. They weren't responsible for that woman vanishing, and they definitely hadn't messed with her mind. But the elder kept yelling that they were the root of evil, just like the ice mage had said. The villagers had found out about Roland's arm and other things. It didn't take long for Solana and her brother-in-law to realize the ice mage was Charles, even if neither of them wanted to believe it. And according to what that noble had said, the warrior was responsible for Lily's mother disappearing because they'd sent her a letter. The man admitted he'd thought the two visitors were suspicious from the start, and he regretted not stopping them from entering the village. On top of that, they'd been given something by the ice mage in case the main guy came back. One of the villagers grabbed the gift and used it, firing a huge beam of light that exploded in the sky, a signal for the kingdom's knights. There was a demon. Solana hated the mess they were in, but they couldn't waste time. She said she'd handle Lily while her brother-in-law ran. A few villagers tensed when they saw him sprint off, but the elder told them not to chase. Let the kingdom's men deal with it so nobody got hurt. Besides, they needed to focus on fixing Solana's brainwashing. Outside, the knights rushed toward the village after seeing the signal, keeping formation and speed to catch the demon in time. But Roland had already slipped into the trees and watched them pass, thinking how skilled they were to get there so fast. Even so, he didn't want pointless fights. He needed to sort things out with the village. Charles would never betray him, so someone else had to be pinning this on them. Roland took off running to find his old friend and figure out how to fix it. Meanwhile, the villagers dragged Solana into a cave, probably where they were keeping Lily safe too. It was huge with branching paths. Before they threw her in a cage, they hauled her to a little stream, tied her hands up high, and dumped ice-cold water over her. They tried to force her to talk, but she refused to admit her brother-in-law had turned into a monster. The elder finally ordered her caged and said they'd keep the interrogation going. Someone asked what they'd do if she never changed her mind. The elder said it'd be a shame, but they'd have to execute her. Not just Solana, Lily too. They locked her up, hoping she'd clear her head and come to her senses. Soaked and shivering, Solana curled up when she heard a familiar voice. Lily locked in the cage beside her, upset it had come to this. Solana lit up, telling her they'd come to rescue her. Lily hadn't been hurt, just scared of the dark. Relief washed over Solana, and she started figuring out how to get them out. Then Lily asked if they'd seen her mother. The whole village was saying the visitors were bad people behind all the trouble, and it had Lily worried. Solana promised it wasn't true they were there for her. Lily looked relieved and said that even though they'd received a letter, it must have been from a stranger. She remembered her mom reading it and telling her it wasn't from Roland. Her mother hid her worry, told Lily to stay home, and said she had to go take care of something important. She hugged her, made sure she'd behave and wait there, and warned her not to follow strangers. Hearing that, Solana was sure her mom knew it was a trap. Even so, she chose to protect Lily herself and left the house. Even though, that makes her nervous, but the martial artist promises they'll find Lily's mom as soon as they get out. Solana knows the truth would be too much right now. First, they escape. The guards only come 3 times a day to bring food, so they've got a window before the next visit. Solana pulls out a hidden knife and cuts the ropes on Lily's arms. Once their wrists are free, she'll pick the cell locks with a hair clip she's been saving. Lily listens, impressed. Then they both freeze footsteps. A group is coming. It's the elder, leading a few knights toward the cages. One soldier eyes the girls and says they're followers of the demon Roland. He asks if there's any sign the brainwashing is wearing off. The elder says no. Apparently, even the cave's cold water didn't work. The knight snaps. Lukewarm, he's not talking about the river. He means the civilian's attitude. Creepy as hell, he says when you're dealing with followers of demon tribes, you always have to go one step further. Meanwhile, Roland searches the forest until he reaches a cliff and finds who he's been looking for. Back when the team split up, the two of them used to watch the moonlight from places like this. Roland figured Charles would be here. He tells him what happened in the village. Someone's trying to pin crimes on them. They need to work together, find the real enemy, and explain everything to the townspeople. Charles starts gathering power. He asks how Roland could be dumb enough to think he'd never be betrayed. He says he's hated Roland from the start. He's just been hiding it.
Roland Star, confused.
He thought they were comrades. Charles doesn't. He says he's been lying up until now, then fires a volley of ice shards. He says they were born into a world where people get used like tools for someone else's gain, and that's the best way to live. Roland may have lost his swordsmanship, but he's still strong enough to defend himself. Charles admits it. That's why he stayed close in the first place. Roland made getting results easy. None of it makes sense to Roland. He remembers their smiles, even the night Charles stayed in his hometown. Charles says that part was real because Felicia was a really beautiful woman. Roland goes cold. Charles keeps talking. He fell for Felicia, Roland's childhood friend, so hard he even thought about taking her for himself when he saw how in love they were. But idiot Roland was always running off toward demons. Charles figured he'd die sooner or later, and then Charles would take Felicia. He says it was a shame when he heard she died. And, yeah, he naturally felt some hatred when the news came. Roland asks if that's why Charles trashed him in the village, spreading lies, wrecking his reputation. Charles says kind of, but that wasn't the main reason. Because Solana's a prisoner right now. And since she reminds him of Felicia, he wants to take her for himself too. Once he gets rid of Roland, he can blame some random demon for the death, then comfort Solana while she's grieving. Roland, shocked and furious, says he never thought Charles was such a massive piece of trash. Charles just says life's always been like this. Nobody trusts anybody. You don't get a choice. You act in your own self-interest. Roland was trying to justify revenge with his dead wife's arm. So in a way they're alike. Seeing Roland go quiet, Charles says he's sick of the boring conversation. He whips the ice up again and attacks without hesitation. Roland can't move. Charles strolls up and says Roland's wide open now. Up close, he unloads everything, freezing him solid. Charles thinks it's over, but Roland's voice still pushes through the magic, and he sighs, realizing he really has been selfish. Even so, he can't die now. He shatters the ice with his flaming arm. Charles looks briefly surprised, but not bothered by the resistance. He doesn't know what the kingdom's knights were planning departing. Roland knew his sister-in-law wasn't so weak she'd let herself be played. She was strong enough to try to support someone like him. Then they looked toward the village and saw a cloud of smoke rising, not a fire, a signal from Solana. She'd escaped with Lily just like he expected. Good. That meant Roland couldn't go to her yet. First, he had to deal with the problem in front of him. Charles, seething, couldn't stand that it was always that warrior who got everything. Now he only wanted one thing, kill Roland while he still had the chance. Roland didn't plan to take his former friend's life. He'd only been antagonizing demons. Instead, he was going to punch that noble so hard he'd beat that twisted personality out of him. Of course, the noble wasn't about to let himself get grabbed by that demonic arm. He struck first. A snowstorm swallowed Roland's view, cutting him off. Then a rain of ice spikes dropped from above, trying to skewer him. He blocked what he could, and the flames in his arm carved him a path forward. Then another surprise blue foxes rushed in, snapping at him. Magical beasts that hunted travelers in snowstorms. So Charles had summoned them. Roland demanded to know if they were real, even worrying Charles was enslaving them. Charles only sighed. This wasn't slavery. It was raw power, and he didn't think Roland looking like that had any right to judge a creature's power. Roland didn't have time to figure out where the foxes came from. They kept ambushing him, and the storm kept him half blind, draining his stamina. Ice spikes kept coming, a brutal combo. He tried to think of a counter, but the pressure didn't let up. A third fox lunged from behind. Charles seized the opening and struck. The hits landed clean, forcing Roland back, wounded. One chance. Roland ignited the flames in his arm and burst out of the freezing storm, reappearing right beside the mage. Charles was weak up close. He scrambled to defend himself, throwing up an ice barrier to keep Roland off him. It wasn't enough. Roland smashed it to pieces. Fire and ice detonated together as Roland shouted, pushing himself to the limit. With brute force, he sent Charles flying toward the cliff's edge. Charles caught himself at the last second, clinging on as chunks of rock broke loose and fell into the dust below. Looking up, the mage realized Roland was trying to save him. Why? Roland hadn't expected his former friend to turn into such trash, but the crime of failing to protect his dead wife was his. He didn't have the right to kill Charles. And it wasn't too late to start over. If they joined forces, they could defeat the demons, the real enemies of humanity. Charles asked if he'd be forgiven. Roland said yes, as long as they could fight side by side again. Charles laughed, said the answer was disgusting, and he let go. In the end, he never meant to take that demonic hand. All Roland could do was scream his name as his former friend vanished into the drop, hating the mess they'd made of everything. When it came down to it, Roland's right arm only ever hurt and destroyed. He couldn't stop wondering if he'd ever be able to save anyone. Then out of nowhere, a few ice spears nearly hit him, or rather it wasn't an attack. It was something the mage left behind as he suddenly appeared again, flying across the sky.
Roland froze.
Charles looked completely different now, warped into some strange creature. The Glass family had been a line of top-tier mages trusted by the kingdom, contributing greatly with their power. The land they ruled stayed peaceful even in this era, and many high-ranking executive knights came from the Glass line. On the front lines, they were considered one of the strongest forces around. But behind the scenes, they were seen as a faction tied to the demon race. The Glass had offered a guarantee and in exchange accepted the demon race's demand to take a certain number of lives. The heroes who came back from the only people who walked off the battlefield without a scratch were the ones who ignored demon invasions and traded innocent lives at the negotiating table. Charles was born in the middle of that, and he decided the whole endure hardship for world peace thing was a pathetic lie. Fighting demons was stupid. If you had to fight, you fought monsters, not other races. Better to live, however, was convenient and squeeze everything you could out of status and power. That's how Charles survived. So when he heard about Roland, someone who'd lived the exact opposite way and still ended up getting Felicia killed, Charles felt one thing: hatred.
In Altred, Charles met Dronzer.
Kronz called him a good mage even if he was a spoiled kid who'd given in to demons. Charles showed what he could do when asked without even knowing why. Maybe that kid was there to judge humans, but no. Demons did whatever they wanted because they needed human despair. Kronz didn't mind teaming up with humans if it paid, and Charles was obviously the type who wasn't satisfied with his life. So Kronz made an offer that benefited both sides. It was obvious Charles hated Roland. His eyes practically screamed he'd never forgive him. The problem was the gap in power. Charles didn't have a finishing move that could kill a warrior like that, so Kronz decided to give him a gift. That's how Charles gained the ability to transform into a creature and keep his mind. Power surged through him like he could do anything. Maybe it was the same rush Roland felt when he got that arm. Roland stared, stunned, and asked why he'd go that far. Charles didn't bother answering. He charged his former friend head-on, going for the kill. When their attacks collided, Roland felt it immediately. Charles had jumped to executive level. From here on out, the flames in Roland's arm wouldn't be enough to hold back Charles's ice. Worse, his heat wouldn't stop the blizzards coming next. Charles loved it. He drove Roland back, laughing, taunting him to give up already so he could go meet Felicia in the afterlife. Roland defended as best he could. He couldn't fall here. He still had something to do in this world. And even if he didn't want to do it to his former friend, he had no choice. He used his ability to drain the enemy's power. The moment Charles felt himself weakening, he kicked back with his wings in open distance. But Roland had taken enough. His flame hand shifted into an ice one too. Now he had the power to stop him no matter what it took. Watching from afar, Kronz laughed when he realized the protagonist's hidden trick. Humans with plans like that were always the most fun to mess with. In that case, maybe it was time for a special entrance. Meanwhile, Charles thought Felicia's arm having some gross ability like that was honestly laughable. Maybe she'd been frustrated this whole time, and that was her hidden power. Either way, he wasn't about to lose to it. When a snow fox lunged at him again, Roland grabbed it and crushed it. His arm had basically hit absolute zero, so even magical beasts like that froze solid. Charles made more, sending them in waves, and Roland wiped them out one after another. Then they traded blows. Roland remembered stealing most of the heat from Meridogo's flames back then, but ice had limits. The temperature couldn't drop any lower than it already had. Charles mocked him for it. His cold wasn't anything special, and the fact Roland still wanted revenge just proved he'd been clinging to that hope from the start. The more hits Roland took, the more he felt it. His hand-to-hand had improved, but eventually, he hit the ground, not even sure how he was supposed to beat the mage. Then Charles said, confused, that he didn't like this. Even now, Roland was still stuck on the stupid idea that he could stop him. Once that demonic power got used, there was no going back to normal, so Roland's goal was never going to happen. At that point, Roland sighed. Solana was never going to love him anyway. Not that it mattered. He could always turn her into an ice sculpture and admire her whenever he wanted. Frustrated, he asked if it was really that impossible for them to understand each other. The mage agreed. It had been fate the moment Roland was born into the Glass family. Like always, Roland's world kept rotting, but that was exactly why he couldn't stop chasing his goal. He'd use every bit of power he had to get his revenge. The powers he'd stolen with his right arm fused into one force. Meridogo's flames and Charles's ice became a new technique, one that might make him even stronger. Proved itself immediately. Roland landed a punch and dropped his opponent so fast, the mage didn't even realize what happened. Charles couldn't understand where the kid got that kind of strength. Felt like straight-up cheating. Furious, he screamed, called Roland a thief, and sent a swarm of ice foxes at him. Roland destroyed every magical creature without trouble. He walked up to his former friend, ready to end it. One punch, then a massive explosion. When Charles opened his eyes again, he realized he really had hated Roland all this time. And yet, deep down he'd admired him too. Roland was the guy who held on to hope without even knowing anything, keeping it burning in his heart no matter what. Now that Roland understood resentment, the mage wondered what kind of future waited for him. Part of him hoped Roland would live life to the fullest. Watching Charles disappear left Roland thoughtful, not sure what to make of it. But the royal knights were coming, and they'd noticed the mess. He didn't want to deal with anyone else, so he hurried to find his sister-in-law. He ran out of the forest toward the girl, not noticing something purple sliding through the dirt behind him. Roland had promised to meet Solana earlier. The spot was south of the smoky campfire. Before long, he found the martial artist. She rushed over, checking if he was okay after hearing the explosions. She recognized the ice magic from a distance as Charles's and asked how he was.
Roland hésita-t-elle.
He'd explain later. For now, he was just relieved Lily was safe, but they had to get back to the village immediately. They needed Lily to tell everyone that Solana and Lily had been under some kind of mind control. The villagers were worried about Lily. And if they didn't clear this up, they might treat her even worse than before. Solana asked if Roland was really okay with that. Wouldn't it be better to explain everything properly? But Roland didn't think. He just felt like he could protect the little girl and that all he ever did was hurt the people who trusted him. Solana shut that down fast. He'd saved her plenty of times. Even so, Roland preferred being the bad guy and keeping it simple. Then Crones appeared. He asked permission to interrupt their exciting argument and waved cheerfully. The demon said he'd been watching and praised Roland for facing an old companion with such intensity. Solana had no idea what he meant. Roland zeroed in on one thing. Crones was the one who turned Charles into a demon. Crones agreed immediately, saying he'd only done the same thing they did to his right-hand man. Roland lunged at him straight through like Crones was smoke. With a sigh, Crones told him to calm down. He didn't see why they were mad. Roland could blame the demon race all he wanted, but in the end, it was Charles's fault for betraying them. Crones had only given the noble a chance to act on the feelings he'd buried for years, then he dropped another bomb. The Glass family had been connected to demons for generations. That genuinely shocked Roland. Crones said humans were just as corrupted as the thing they fought so hard to defeat. Roland, frustrated, insisted demonic influence was what made everything worse, what pushed Charles into betrayal. Crones laughed at how weak Roland was when it came to feelings, getting depressed over a piece of trash he called a friend. In the end, the executive decides he should start targeting the people close to him. He'd wanted to see with his own eyes what Roland was up to ever since the Okana village incident and the whole thing with Felicia's corpse. So Crones says he's going to their hometown personally this time with his real body, not a shadow. And if they want to protect the civilians there, they'd better hurry up and save them because he loves the idea of leaving them desperate. As soon as the executive disappears, Solana tries to talk to her brother-in-law, but Roland's state scares her. He's so furious he looks like a real demon, ready to rush to Okana immediately. Solana takes the chance to tell Lily she can ask for help if she gets into trouble again. For now, she should go back to the village and tell everyone those two were the villains. Lily hesitates, then agrees. She hugs Solana and makes her promise they'll see each other again. Finally, the girl pulls away and leaves. Roland says his sister-in-law could go back too and explain herself since it's not too late, but the martial artist yells at him to shut up. She refuses to accept that they have to abandon Lily now. Still, she's decided to carry the same burden Roland's carried for so long. Holding back tears, she tells him to hurry up and head to Okana already. They run toward their homeland, Solana feeling like she has to push herself even harder for what's coming. A little later, they arrive, and the protagonist wonders where Crones is. The first thing they see is a man chopping firewood, and the martial artist lets out a relieved sigh, thinking the civilians are safe. She walks up to talk, but the warrior yanks her back. Something's off. Then they realize the civilian is a zombie-like creature that, for some reason, moves like a human. Not just him. Several others are in the same sad state. Roland wonders if they got there too late, mourning what Okana has become. He punches the ground, hating how he's always too weak and too slow to save people. Before Solana can comfort him, one of the zombies charges with an axe. Roland blocks with his right arm and freezes all the villagers with magic. It's his way of giving them a dignified end, one without pain. A voice laughs about how tragic it all is. Crones appears, pointing out how easy it is for Roland to kill them. Solana yells that it's all the demon's fault, but the executive plays dumb. Turning into monsters was a gift from the Demon King. And if they have something to say, they should take it up with him. But Crones has learned something else. Using necromancy and seeing how beaten down they look, he decides to mess with them. He says he called someone, then points to a person they've been dying to see again, someone they loved more than anything. Solana starts crying the moment she realizes Crones brought back the monster wearing Felicia's corpse and laughed in their faces. Without a word, the protagonist steps forward and says, it's been a long time since he's felt this angry. Right then, all he can think about is killing that demon kid no matter what it takes. Crones asks if he really has the guts to take the life of someone he loves for a second time. That's when Solana steps in front, determined to take her brother-in-law's place and carry the weight with him. She can't let Roland kill his own sister, so this time she'll share that pain. With that resolve, the martial artist tells the warrior to deal with the executive and she'll take Felicia. At first, the protagonist worries about leaving something that intense to her, but she won't back down. Remembering the pained look she had earlier, Roland only asks her not to push herself too hard. He'll focus on beating Crones, then join her afterward. The executive is totally fine with that, and he makes Felicia's body attack her own sister. Even though she's scared, Solana tells herself she can do this. She moves in to punch, but when she remembers her sister's happy smile, she hesitates and lands a weaker hit on her opponent's arm. Crones laughs at her, especially after that heartfelt speech about carrying her brother-in-law's burdens. Even while talking, the executive easily dodges Roland's attacks. He's a necromancer, so close-range fighting is really not his thing. Still, he figures it's fine to do it at least once. As the fight drags on, Solana realizes the criticism she got was fair. She needs more resolve. She can't just say she doesn't want to do something, especially knowing how much her brother-in-law has suffered alone. She's always known watching him carry that pain on his shoulders. Even traveling together, no matter what she said, Roland shut himself off, refusing to talk about how he felt. The wound of killing his own wife ran too deep. Now Solana believes she's the only one who can help him by defeating her own sister. If she does, she can help him, and they can live side by side, and maybe, just maybe, she can make him truly smile again. With that determination, she drives a solid punch into Felicia's body. The creature fires one of those weird purple orbs straight at her, hitting her dead on.
Roland freeze.
Crones cheers, thrilled that what he planned for this moment finally happened. He tells the protagonist, delighted, that Solana's going to become an adorable monster, just like Felicia. The demon wonders if Roland will be able to kill her too, especially with his dead wife's arm. The desperation on the former hero's face is enough to satisfy him for now. Roland rushes to his sister-in-law, begging her to stay sane. He can't lose her too, but he takes a direct hit and goes flying. To his complete shock, Solana starts to change, and the rage makes him scream through tears of frustration and pain. Crones watches, savoring the human despair, curious how Roland's right-hand man will react. The protagonist feels like this is the end, like he's hit his limit. In the darkness of his mind, a voice calls him by name. He tries to ignore it. He has no right to answer. Not only Felicia, but now Solana has been swallowed by the demonic transformation. People have been lost day after day, and now the warrior doesn't think he can save anyone. Someone like him who looks for comfort in the voice of his dead beloved, even knowing it's an illusion, doesn't deserve that kind of attention. But the voice shouts and yanks him out of the shadows, forcing him to look. Stunned, Roland stares at Felicia's face. She says she has something important to tell him. The girl says she was the same person, the one he thought was Solana's sister and his wife, Felicia. Roland drops to his knees and hugs her around the waist, crying, begging for forgiveness. She just sighs, seeing how hard he tried to keep the promise they made even after she caused him so much pain. Still, she says she wasn't desperate and she didn't mind him using her right arm. Felicia was happy that a simple village girl like her could support him at all. Roland snaps back that the ability he got was awful because all it could do was steal things from other people. But she tells him it's amazing that she became his new strength in this world. And besides, the power itself wasn't stealing, and that revelation shocks Roland. It was an ability that could save the world. Felicia would have loved more time to talk, but they're running out of it. She asks him to trust the power they share a little more. If they work together, they can save Solana too. Holding her hand, Roland agrees, and he feels his late wife's hopes settle in his heart. Back in the real world, he looks at his right arm and decides he's going to trust it from now on. Crones watches, eager to see how this ends as Roland attacks the former martial artist. This time, Roland is determined to use Felicia's arm to steal the curse from his sister-in-law's body and save her. Their powers collide and build into an explosion. The executive shields his eyes from the bright light. To his surprise, Roland really stops Solana's transformation. His right arm shifts again, coming back even stronger than before. Completely confused, Crones demands to know why she's still human. Furious that the tragedy he created got undone so easily, he ignores what he just saw and fires more cursed orbs at them. Again, Roland blocks with his right arm and absorbs the evil power. Enraged, Crones attacks over and over. He's been waiting for this moment ever since he first met the former hero. Even he thinks an ability that cancels curses is way too broken to exist in this world. Roland tells him he's got it all wrong. Felicia's ability was being kind to others, taking on their pain. That monstrous transformation that warps people's bodies is something Roland plans to end for good once he beats Crones. He closes in and lands a clean punch to Crone's face, sending him flying. His new right arm reveals its true power, can change shape however he wants. He names it the Arm of 10,000 Forms. Crones gets back up. Roland swings again, and the demon dodges or thinks he does. Roland's locked in now. A beat later, he catches him and slams him into the ground. He uses the arm to smash the executive through walls and into the earth, wrecking houses and tearing up the village. Finally, Roland yanks Crones in close, giving him room to spit more curses, refusing to be looked down on now of all times. Still doesn't work. Crones won't quit even as Roland hammers his face again and again. That horrible shape of Roland's arm makes Crones furious. It's supposed to be a piece of the warrior's beloved. He should appreciate it more. Roland says looks don't matter anymore. He's fighting alongside Felicia. Her soul is with him wherever he goes, and that's all he needs. Crones doesn't want to hear the cheesy love talk. He unveils a new ability, self-necromancy. It revives the dead in a bigger, stronger form than when they were alive. Maridogo was already impressive, so Crones knows using it on himself will make him even more terrifying. He transforms and grows, dead set on killing Roland. Every human in this world exists only to be trampled by demons. Every scrap of hope in their hearts has to be crushed. Roland rejects that hope is what keeps them alive. That's what he and Felicia believe, but that disgusting being all generic and romantic just pisses the executive off, and he lunges to kill him. Roland doesn't back down. He won't let humanity lose to the demon race. He takes the attack on his right arm and flings Crones away with his own strength. After getting beaten, the necromancer can't believe he got confronted head-on and lost. But if this keeps going, he'll win by any means necessary. Roland turns, startled, as Felicia's corpse gives off a purple light. Then it spreads. Every zombie in the village starts glowing, their energy stolen and funneled straight into Crones as he triggers another ability. He powers up and forces everybody in the village to fuse into one twisted creature. The plan is simple. Make the dead civilians fight and force Roland to kill them over and over. Roland doesn't hesitate. He uses metamorphosis on his arm and absorbs the fused mass. The civilians' bodies return to human form like they used to, including Felicia. He can't bring them back to life, but he won't let a demon disrespect their bodies. More than anything, he wants that executive to feel the pain he's caused carrying the weight of human lives. Crones doesn't want to hear that from trash like him. Meanwhile, Solana walks through a pure white space, unsure where she is. Felicia appears and calls her sister by name, a little sad she can't connect with her as strongly as she could with Roland. Solana realizes who it is and breaks down, apologizing for not being able to help. She wasn't there for Roland or Felicia when they needed her. She couldn't even support her brother-in-law while he grieved. Deep down, she hates how useless she feels even as family. Felicia admits she didn't just make her husband suffer. She hurt her sister too, so she doesn't want Solana apologizing or tearing herself apart. Solana is fine exactly as she is. Felicia wants her to live her own way however she wants. And if one day she chose to stand by Roland's side, not as a replacement but as herself, maybe Felicia would get a little jealous. Still, she'd allow it. She hugs Solana and asks her to live for herself from now on. Solana wakes in the real world to Roland holding her, relieved. She says she saw Felicia in her dreams, and Roland says he did too. Solana doesn't want to share what she heard, but Roland says he learned something from his wife too. His right arm could save the world from pain, and that's what he'd use it for. Meanwhile, in a dark castle, a purple flame finishes its report. It tells the demon lord to stay calm because even in that form, Crones still plans to defeat Roland. The king thanks it, rises from his throne, strides over to the executive, and stomps him out for good. When he heard the protagonist had come back to life, he expected him to be totally broken. But the ex-hero's new arm kept evolving, and maybe one day it could even reach the power of the gods. The thought makes the king smile, eager to steal Roland's arm for himself.